Hello, everyone. Welcome into Coach Craig Sports. This is the live stream for the Monday Night Football game, a single game showdown slate for NFL for week number 5. It's the game between the Kansas City Chiefs and Las Vegas Raiders. So essentially what I'm going to do in this stream is kind of go over the inactives, go through the different pricing on the players. Obviously going to take a little bit of time here just since people are kind of coming in and everything like that. If you guys have any questions in general, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'll answer them as quickly as possible. And then at the same time, we'll be building some lineups as well. If we get a little bit of time towards the end, I know a couple guys like to jump in here that are primarily FanDuel players. We can look over there as well. But without further ado, we'll get started a little bit with the NFL inactives for this game. So for the Chiefs, Shane Buechele, third string quarterback, doesn't matter. Harrison Butker, the kicker, a little bit relevant just because we already knew he was out, but Matthew Wright kicked last week. He was pretty decent, and oddly enough, the pricing on him, he's a little bit more higher priced than Daniel Carlson, and I thought maybe Carlson would be a little bit more chalky since he's a little bit cheaper priced, and that he kind of has the bigger name, but the projected ownership does not indicate that at this point in time. Mike Dana is a starting defensive end, or he was at least early in the season for them, and he's inactive, been dealing with a little bit of injury there. Ronald Jones has been active all season. Josh Candawa has been active all season. Probably the biggest one for the Chiefs is the guard in Trey Smith is active for them. So somebody else will be starting in his place tonight. A little bit of a dent into that offensive line for the Chiefs overall. Might impact the run game, a little bit pass protection overall, but we'll see how that all shakes out. And then Benton Whiteley, who just kind of joined the team recently, still inactive for this game as well. On the Raiders side, they're without Tayshaun Bowser, who's just rotational depth the end. Britton Brown's like the 5th string running back, so he doesn't really matter. Jayon Brown was or had been starting a little bit with Denzel Perriman out, but he's back at this point in time. Brown's dealing with his own injury, and they brought Blake Martinez up from the practice squad, so nothing too exciting there. Matthew Butler is out, and then Jonathan Hankins probably the other big one on defense for them. Kind of that a little bit more run stuffing defensive tackle. Maybe the Chiefs are a little bit better off running the ball tonight than they would be otherwise. And then probably the biggest one for this slate is going to be Foster Merrell, the tight end for the Raiders, is out tonight. In my initial projections, he wasn't looking like too great or anything else like that, but he still was the guy that was in play in the player pool if he ended up playing. But he barely practiced this week. I believe he practiced in a limited capacity on the last day of the week, and does not look like he's going tonight, obviously, because he's inactive at this point in time. So going to look like Jesper Horsted behind Darren Waller tonight. Could be some opportunities for him, maybe a cheap punt play if you want to go there overall. But with that being said, we'll get moved over to DraftKings. So I'm going to get rid of the inactives real quick. And then I'll pull up the DraftKings so we can talk about some of the pricing and some of the guys overall. So let's see here. So we're going to share this screen. I have a couple lineups that I already built personally myself, about 6 different ones. This is just kind of me going over the pricing and talking through some different lineups as well. So if you guys know me, if you've already been in here before, I like looking at flex pricing first because you only play one guy in the captain spot. And it's not that hard to multiply times 1.5 for that captain pricing overall. So when we're going down the list here, we're going to start with Patrick Mahomes at the top at $12,000. And is Patrick Mahomes? He could very much well be the top play on tonight's slate, but he does come with a pretty big price tag. He's going to be in more lineups than not. He is, I'm just pulling my notes now. So he's expected to be 18% in the captain spot. So a pretty good amount there. You could definitely get to 20 if you want to do so in that case. But the projections I did earlier using Run the Sims was a little bit lesser with the inputs that I did put in. Obviously, the game script could go a whole lot of different ways. So I just kind of put in, kind of my median projections and everything like that. So there's a reality where the Chiefs run away with this game. Patrick Mahomes looks really good. Maybe Clyde Edwards-Helaire, maybe Isaiah Pacheco looks pretty good. Like there's a situation where that happens, but there's also a situation where this game's back and forth. And there's also a situation where the Raiders actually come out and they play pretty well and kind of hand it to the Chiefs. That one's probably the less likely situation, but when we're playing DFS, we got to think about all these different scenarios in general. So that's kind of the biggest thing there. Then we have Devonte Adams. He's $11,400. Pretty hefty price tag for what he's actually done this season. And decent little matchup for him. He's probably going to play He's going to see most of his snaps on the outside. He's going to be going against guys like Rashad Fenton and Jalen Watson. So should be pretty favorable matchups for him. Obviously, he's going to be the top target for the Raiders. But then you also have guys around with Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow, how their target shares look tonight as well. Travis Kelsey is $10,800. Very good player overall. Obviously, we know that he's one of the top tight ends. It's a very good matchup for him as well. The biggest thing with him is just going to be that price tag, since he is the third highest priced player on the slate overall. Derek Carr's at $10,200. We'll have a fair amount of exposure to him once again tonight. He's had some of his best games in his career against the Chiefs. Did not end up being the case last year, but the prior year before that, one of his best games of his career did come against the Chiefs. A couple years before that, he had a pretty solid game versus them as well. So there is opportunities there. Obviously, a lot is going to depend on that offensive line and how long they can block for tonight. That's been the weakness of this Raiders team so far this season, is that offensive line just has not been good. Shuffled some starters here and there throughout the season. And then we go down to Josh Jacobs at $8,800. There is a reality where Josh Jacobs is a really good player on the slate. If they try to play keep away from the Chiefs, kind of like the Colts did with Jonathan Taylor, Josh Jacobs could be very, very involved and potentially even score some touchdowns. At this point in time, it's really just him. And then Brandon Bolton has kind of been used like as a third down back. So they've really been riding Josh Jacobs. He's healthy at this point in time, which is kind of a surprise that he's made it this far in the season without getting injured, since he gets banged up all the time. But definitely looking like a decent low play tonight as well. The projected ownerships, or excuse me, the projections or the simulations that I did run earlier did like him quite a bit. I don't think I'm going to get to as much as they liked him in with all my inputs and everything else like that, but still a solid play today, whether you play him in the regular flex spot or the captain spot overall. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, very good start to the season so far. Would not expect that to change too much today. $7,400, not a bad price tag by any means. Darren Waller at $7,200. He has not done a lot this season. Decent little matchup for him though this week. There is no Willie Gay for the Chiefs. Obviously, he's been suspended, and that's like the third game of his suspension now. I believe it was 6 games overall that he got popped for. And Nick Bolton, more of a run stuffing linebacker, not the greatest in coverage. They played Darius Harris next to him. Last week, they played a bunch of safeties. So we'll see how it all shapes out to this week. Probably going to have a safety on Waller anyways, but maybe it's the Honey Badger even, but could be some opportunities there for him. It really just depends on how involved Hunter Renfrow is in his return to the lineup. Then we have Juju Smith-Schuster at $6,600. He's a guy that's extremely popular on this slate, and the Raiders have not fared too well against slot wide receivers this year. A lot of that's because Nate Hobbs has been playing on the outside, and he was their slot corner last year, and he had very good success there. But Juju Smith-Schuster could be somebody in play tonight, but he's really, really popular. So he's a guy that I'm fading just a little bit myself personally. If you guys want to play him, I do not have any problem with that. $6,600 price tag is not bad by any means. The biggest thing with him is he is not yet to score a touchdown at this point in time this year. Hunter Renfrow at $5,800, a very, very good price tag here. He's projected to be pretty popular. He is 14% ownership projected in the captain spot. And Devonte Adams was at 12%, so that's 2% more than him even. Both are about 50% in total exposure. And then on the Chiefs side, we're going to talk about Juju real quick. He was at 10% ownership. Kelsey was at 14%. Going back to Derek Carr, he was 7%. Josh Jacobs was 6%. So those kind of goes over everybody we talked about so far. Marquez Valdez Scantling is the next guy up at $5,200. He's been leading the Chiefs in snaps. I believe routes ran as well. So he's a pretty decent play. Obviously, you're hoping for a little bit of upside there with him. But if he does hit it, it's going to be looking pretty good today. He's only 4% projected in that captain spot. So I do have some exposure to him there overall. Matt Collins at $5,000. He had the one big week. Hunter Renfrow's back this week. It's kind of a hefty price tag, in my opinion, personally, but there is a chance that he gets long on a deep throw, something like that. Derek Carr's been known to do that. Chiefs are vulnerable in that area at times, so it could happen tonight. I'm not betting on it happen, so I'm going to be a little bit underweight to him on the field. So I'm going to be a little bit more underweight to him than like the field overall. So that's just kind of how I'm taking it with Matt Collins. Isaiah Pacheco is at $4,800. Pretty hefty price tag considering what he's done so far this season. Obviously, he had a pretty good week last week. Some of those carries did come in garbage time. Yes, he had, I believe, 6 carries in the first half, but still was boosted a little bit by that garbage time. There is a chance that he ends up being in the optimal lineup. Probably worth a little bit of exposure, but not something I'm going out of my way to tonight. If it comes up, it comes up. McCall Hardman at $4,600, kind of the discount version of Marquez Valdez Scantling here. He is kind of a big play threat as well. Obviously, involved in the kick return game as well. $4,600, doesn't play as many snaps as Juju or Marquez Valdez Scantling. There is opportunities there, but you just got to get a little bit lucky with it. Obviously, these Chiefs pass catchers, it's all over the board. Which one's going to go off? One of them is probably going to do pretty well tonight, but just kind of guessing which one is kind of the hard part to do. And that's why you make multiple lineups on single games like this. Chiefs defense, if I'm going to play one of the defenses, is probably going to be the Chiefs. If I want to run like a 5-1 onslaught with the Chiefs, maybe I'm running the Chiefs out, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelsey, Chiefs defense, maybe Matthew Wright, and then sticking whatever Raiders player fits in there. So that's one way to go about it. Matthew Wright talked a little bit about before. He is $200 more than Daniel Carlson. I'd rather play Daniel Carlson personally. And Daniel Carlson is projected for a little bit less ownership. So I would be all about Daniel Carlson tonight. I think you can play either kicker. Probably want to play both in this game overall, since there is plenty of weapons to attack on this slate overall. Let's see here. Then we get down to Jerick McKinnon. He's $3,000. The one problem with him is last week he wasn't quite as involved, but he's kind of that pass catching running back. If this is a back and forth game, if the Raiders somehow get out ahead, then you're probably going to want Jerick McKinnon in your lineup. So if you're building like a 4-2 stack in favor of the Raiders, maybe that's where you slide in Jerick McKinnon. Or if you go 5-1 onslaught for the Raiders, probably not one that's going to pay off too often tonight, but there is a reality that it could happen. Jerick McKinnon would be a fine little run back in that case. Sky Moore's at $2,400. Speaking of guys that got some garbage time run last week, Sky Moore was definitely a beneficiary there. I do like Sky Moore quite a bit as a prospect. I think he has a good ceiling, but the question is how often is he going to be on the field? And for a guy that's at $2,400, I like to see him be on the field just a little bit more. Then we get down to Brandon Bolton. If you think the Chiefs get ahead way early in this game, or you're like doing a Chiefs type of onslaught and you don't have a lot of money left over, Brandon Bolton would be a good guy to put in there. Zamir White, I'm avoiding at $1,400. Hasn't played too much this season. Justin Watson at $1,000. He's going to play a little bit for the Chiefs. He had one big catch earlier this season, hasn't really done too much else. If you want to take that dart throw at $1,000, you can do it, but I'd probably take one of the backup tight ends instead, and Noah Gray or Jody Fortson, just hoping they catch a touchdown. Obviously, we talked about Foster Merrell being out. So then you could look at Jesper Horsted, who's going to be the backup tight end tonight. He's $200. And then there's really not much else down here unless you want to play Michael Burton, the fullback, or like Jacob Johnson, the fullback. But I really want to recommend that tonight overall. They're not super involved in this game overall. But that's just kind of looking at the pricing so far. So I don't really see many people in here. There's not really many questions at this point in time. If you guys come in and you have some questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. But I'm going to go through, build a couple lineups real quick, and just kind of see where we want to go from there. So the first type of lineup that I want to build tonight is probably going to be some types of Chiefs lineup. I know that Travis Kelsey is coming up more optimal than he is projected to be in the captain spot. So I think playing Travis Kelsey in the captain spot is something that's very viable tonight. Obviously, he's got a pretty good matchup as well. You're probably going to want to play Patrick Mahomes alongside him for the ride. Now the question becomes, how else do we want to build this stack? Do we want to put Derek Carr in here? And then if we got Derek Carr, we sucked up a lot of money. So who else do we want to put in here? Do we want to put a Hunter Renfrow at $5,800? We could definitely do that. And then we got $5,800 remaining. So you're going to have to get a little bit creative at this point in time. Are you playing a Jerick McKinnon, or are you playing a Sky Moore? Is that something you really want to do? Personally, I probably play one of the kickers. If we're trying to do a 4-2 onslaught in favor of the Chiefs, probably play Matt Wright there. And there's $1,800 left over. So at this point, we're looking at these cheap guys. Who can we play? We're not going to play Zamir White. Justin Watson's a little bit risky. Maybe we take a chance on one of these backup tight ends with like a Jody Fortson. So you have $1,400 that you're leaving on the table. That's not a bad build right there. Just a couple different ways that you can attack this slate overall. And I don't think this is like a terrible cash build either at the same time, because you're getting exposure to both quarterbacks. You're getting exposure to Travis Kelsey. You're getting exposure to Hunter Renfrow. You're getting exposure to one of the kickers. And then Fortson's kind of the wild card there. So if you want to use that in cash, you could definitely do that tonight. Otherwise, let's see if I can build what I would assume would be a popular cash build tonight. So the most popular captain is Patrick Mahomes, but he is a little bit more pricey. So I'm going to look through, and probably the second most exposure for captain plays that is not super pricey is Hunter Renfrow in the captain spot. So I think we're going to look at Hunter Renfrow in that captain spot. He's $8,700. Then we're going to try to play Derek Carr. We're going to try to play Patrick Mahomes, and we're going to try to play Travis Kelsey. And we're going to say that's kind of the starting point for a cash lineup tonight. And then from there, we can look at a couple different options. Do we want to play a Clyde Edwards-Helaire? Do we want to play a Darren Waller? Probably don't want to play Darren Waller since we're already playing Renfro. You could, well, I would say in theory, you could play Devonte Adams, but in this case, you're probably looking at Kelsey or Adams and picking which one you want to play. Whoever you think is going to have the better game overall. But I would assume that Kelsey's a little bit safer at this point in time, since both of them are the leads in their offense, though. So it's however you want to say that overall. You could go with a safe guy like Juju Smith-Schuster and have $1,700 for the last player, because we kind of know what Juju's going to do overall. Or you could look at maybe one of the kickers and Daniel Carlson, and then we'd have $4,500. You could play both kickers in that situation, which isn't the worst thing to do in a cash build. Especially in single game slates, you could play both kickers. Or what we could do is we could go back out here real quick. We could play, I know Marquez Valdez Scantling is supposed to be super popular tonight, so we could play him, and then we could play like a Jerick McKinnon as well, which isn't the worst in cash, but probably run this out more in a GPP type of setting overall. Let's see here. I'm just going to clear us out again. I know I talked about Josh Jacobs being kind of under-owned or kind of a leverage spot in the captain spot. So if I were going to play him in the captain spot, he's a little bit more expensive than I would like personally, if I'm being honest. Probably going to play Derek Carr still alongside the ride with him. Don't think you need to play Devonte Adams because you kind of get into this area where Josh Jacobs, if he's succeeding, he's getting the touchdowns, which means Devonte Adams is probably not getting touchdowns. He can still get targets. He can still get catches. But at that price tag, we got to compromise something at the same time. So do we want to play Patrick Mahomes? Do we want to play Travis Kelsey here? And then we have $3,800. Definitely could do something like that. Or you play Patrick Mahomes and then you play one of the other wide receivers instead of Travis Kelsey. So maybe this is the lineup where we play Juju. And then we have $8,000 left over. And then ideally you could play both kickers here if you really want to. That would make it a 3-3 stack. So I'm not the fondest of that. We could play a Hunter Renfro, which would make some sense with Josh Jacobs here. And then you get down to kind of who else do you want to play here in that lower price range. Or what we could do, we could take Hunter Renfro out again. Say maybe we want to play Darren Waller, because I think there's a reality that Josh Jacobs and Darren Waller could succeed in the same lineup. Everybody's sleeping on Darren Waller a little bit tonight, and then you still play probably like one of these backup tight ends here. So maybe this one we go Noah Gray instead. This is going to be more of a GPP type of lineup, though. Overall, we're still in that 3-3 area, so that's something that I'm not always the biggest fan of. Usually try to get to 4-2, one way or the other, or 5-1 stacks. But I don't know if it's a completely a night where you want to do the 5-1 onslaught stacks. If you're doing it, you're probably doing it in favor of the Chiefs. But if you want to get a little bit different in GPPs, you could do it in favor of the Raiders overall. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, since we could do another variation of this build with Josh Jacobs. So say maybe we're saying the Raiders kind of control this game. Josh Jacobs is doing pretty well. Maybe you want to sneak that Raiders defense in. This is a very risky play, but this is a GPP type of build overall. So if maybe we're putting the Raiders defense in there, and then maybe we're putting Daniel Carlson as well. So this makes a little bit of sense here. If you wanted to play Devonte Adams still over Carr, you probably could, but there's still about $200 that we're missing there. If you really want to take Carr out and put Travis Kelsey in, you can definitely do that as well. Or if you want to put take Derek Carr out, put Devonte Adams in, then you could put one of the other wide receivers in for the Chiefs overall. That's definitely a lineup that you could do. There's a lot of different variations on tonight's slate overall. I see we have a couple more people popping in here. So if you guys have any questions, I've got about 10, 11 minutes left before I got to get out of here. Feel free to leave your questions in down below. If you guys have any, I know a couple of people that watch do some FanDuel as well, so I can run through that real quick if you guys would like. But at this point in time, looking at the projected captors ownerships, Derek Carr 7%, Josh Jacobs 6%, Devonte Adams 12%, Hunter Renfro is 14%, Matt Collins is 1%, Darren Waller is 4%. So 44% of the projected ownership in the captain spot is going to the Raiders. 56% is going to the Chiefs. Mahomes is 18%. Travis Kelsey is 14%. Juju Smith-Schuster is 10%. Clyde Edwards-Helaire 6%. Marquez Valdez Scantling is 4%. McCole Hardman's 2%. And Jerick McKinnon is also 2%. So the spots, when I did my little inputs on Run the Sims, the negative leverage that did pop up, Mahomes was at 3.8% negative leverage, but I'm not too worried about that. If you're playing Mahomes, obviously you're playing him for his upside. Devonte Adams was about 3% negative leverage, which kind of makes sense given that it was 12%. I don't think it's the end of the world if you do play him there. Juju Smith-Schuster was the big one for me. He had negative 7% leverage with the inputs that I did put in. So unless he's scoring a touchdown or having like a multi-touchdown game or 10-catch game, he's probably somebody that I wouldn't put in the captain spot overall. Although he does have a pretty decent price tag. I'm not afraid to play him in the flex spot though. Hunter Renfrow was a little bit of negative leverage as well, but I don't really worry about him too much. It's just kind of the fact that he's projected for 14% in the captain spot. And then in terms of the guys that we were gaining a little bit of leverage on, Josh Jacobs with the inputs that I had in there, which I don't think are too far fetched from what he's done this season. Whether or not that happens in this game is kind of a little bit of a different story. He had a leverage of 12%. So if he has a decent game, he's going to make a decent captain play. Then Travis Kelsey, you're gaining about 2% leverage, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire was about 3% leverage. So I would try to get some exposure to Travis Kelsey. I try to get some exposure to Clyde Edwards-Helaire in your champion spot. I have 6 different lineups built right now. What's up? So let's see. That popped up and then it went away real quick. So we got JC Money in here. He said, who's the ideal champ for tonight? So I think there's a lot of different answers to this question. And I think this is a slate where you need to build multiple lineups. Like if you're just playing a single entry, it's a little bit tougher then because if you're playing single entry, you're probably just playing like Mahomes in the captain spot. And then you got to get creative the rest of the way. Kind of who you bring along with him for pass catchers. You're probably going to bring 2 of them along. Travis Kelsey might be one of them. Marquez Valdez Scantling is probably going to be the other one. Maybe you put in the kicker for Kansas City and then kind of build around that. That's the one way to do it. Travis Kelsey probably going to be the ideal captain play tonight, honestly. He is 14% projected. Got him in 16% in the little simulations that I did earlier. So if you're playing him in the captain spot, you're probably playing Patrick Mahomes in the flex spot as well. Let's see. I'm going to try to bring up a couple different lineups here. So the way that I do my lineups is I go through, I put them in the lineups that I'm going to play or the rough drafts that I do have. The lineups that I like, I'm going to have them in my quarter contest first, and then I'll enter contest as we get closer to the lock, which is just after I stop doing the stream. So I will share a couple lineups that I'm playing personally. So the first one I got is Hunter Renfrow in the captain spot. We're running Derek Carr back with him. I have Josh Jacobs there and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, so I can get a little bit of exposure to both running backs, kind of fading Patrick Mahomes in this lineup overall. And then we have Travis Kelsey, safe performer either way, and then Daniel Carlson, the kicker. So that's a 4-2 in favor of the Raiders overall. So that's an interesting one to do. The next one is that Travis Kelsey captain spot with Patrick Mahomes alongside him. Then we have Derek Carr and Hunter Renfrow together. So those are the 2 Raiders that I'm playing. So we're saying Derek Carr has a decent game still. Hunter Renfrow is kind of a safe play. Marquez Valdez Scantling and Jody Fortson shooting for some upside here overall. Maybe you trade one of those out or for somebody else. Since we do have Travis Kelsey in the captain spot, there's a lot of ways you can build that lineup overall. Marquez Valdez Scantling in the captain spot in the next one with Patrick Mahomes alongside him for the ride. And then I did bring along, so we're saying MVS has a pretty good game. This is probably a game script where the Chiefs try to get out in front. This is actually a little bit of contrarian line here too, just because we're saying MVS gets like a long touchdown or something. Mahomes has a pretty decent game. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is kind of banging it out towards the end. And then Juju Smith-Schuster just kind of getting, his 6 catches for 60 yards or whatever it's going to be. I like the upside of Darren Waller tonight, although he hasn't done too much this season, but I do like the matchup quite a bit. Josh Jacobs trying to keep the ball away from him. It's like a lot of different ways that you can play this slate overall. And you'll see a lot of these ones that I do have. I got a couple with, a couple $100 left over. This one here I have with $2,100 remaining. So that's a way to get different on your slate overall, is to leave some money on the table. That's so your lineup doesn't get duplicated as much. This one I have Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the champion spot. This is my 5-1 in favor of the Chiefs. So we're saying he's going to get a lot of work there. Patrick Mahomes still going to have a decent game. Travis Kelsey's going to have a decent game. Chiefs defense, because the Chiefs are blowing them out in this game, in this situation. We're playing the Chiefs kicker as well. And then Hunter Renfrow is just kind of getting some of those targets and kind of a good safe play overall that doesn't cost too much. Then let's see, we move down. So let's see. JC said champion spot, Kelsey, Mahomes, MVS, Wright, Carlson, and Jacobs. Yeah, that's definitely a line that you could play. Let's see here. I'm like thinking in my head. Yeah. And then if you wanted to run like a similar line out too, you could also take Jacobs and then flip him into like Darren Waller and leave a little bit of money on the table. That's a way to get different with that lineup. Then the lineups that I do have here, the last two that I have in this one, we had Derek Carr in the champion spot, taking him with some pass catching options. So we got Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow. This is a kind of a fade on Devonte Adams here, but you're getting both other pass catchers. You're getting the kicker and Daniel Carlson, and then we're getting kind of the safe players for the Kansas City Chiefs. So you're fading in this lineup. You're actually fading Devonte Adams and Patrick Mahomes in a sense. So you're saying that they are going to have subpar games. Travis Kelsey's still going to get his work. Juju Smith-Schuster still going to get his work. Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow both have good games, and Daniel Carlson is still kicking for points. That's one way to do it. And then the last one that I have built already was Josh Jacobs in the captain spot. Patrick Mahomes, Derek Carr are both there, so you get exposure to both quarterbacks. You get Hunter Renfrow in here as well. McCall Hardman, just because I want a little bit of exposure to him, and then Daniel Carlson once again. So you'll see in my lineups, I took more of a stance towards Daniel Carlson when it comes to the kickers. I know some people are trying to fade kickers a little bit more tonight. That's a strategy that you could do. You could play guys like Jerick McKinnon and Sky Moore instead of those kickers if you want to do that and then spend up a little bit elsewhere. That's definitely a strategy you can do. But some of those guys do come with some risk too. So just keep in mind what type of contest you're entering, whether it's a cash contest, a single game, or not single game, a single entry, excuse me, or a GPP overall. So that's kind of what I got for in terms of DraftKings. I know a couple of people listening about FanDuel. So FanDuel tonight is a little bit interesting too. I got to bring that up again on the side here. So I have one brought up for FanDuel. So FanDuel, the most popular builds with the projections that I did put in is Patrick Mahomes in the MVP spot with Hunter Renfrow, Josh Jacobs, Marquez Valdez, Scantling, and Travis Kelsey. That is the top one coming up with the projections that I did put in to run the Sims. Next one up would be Patrick Mahomes in the MVP spot, Hunter Renfrow, Josh Jacobs, then McCall Hardman and Travis Kelsey. So the only difference there is Hardman versus MVS. The next one is Patrick Mahomes, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Hunter Renfrow, Josh Jacobs, Marquez Valdez, Scantling. So there's a lot of different ways you can do it on FanDuel. I think there's a couple of value plays over there, but nothing like super, super crazy. Let me look at the salaries real quick. So Derek Carr's $15,000. He's all right there at that price tag. Josh Jacobs, $12,000. Fairly priced well, especially if the Raiders are doing well in this game. Devonte Adams at $14,500. It's a little bit harder to get to him on the FanDuel side, unless you're already putting him with Derek Carr and kind of fading Patrick Mahomes and maybe Travis Kelsey at the same time. Hunter Renfrow is $8,500. Definitely worth getting some exposure to on the FanDuel side, although it is half point PPR, so that hurts him a little bit. Matt Collins is $7,500. Could be in play. Darren Waller is $10,500. You're kind of hoping for an upside game out of him. Carlson's $9,000. I get some exposure to him. You want to get a little bit creative overall on FanDuel, you could go down to some of the cheap guys, whether it's Jesper Horsted at $5,500, whether it's on the Kansas City side. Jerick McKinnon's $6,500. So maybe if you go like Derek Carr, MVP, Devonte Adams, Hunter Renfrow, maybe you could put Patrick Mahomes and McKinnon in there together. I'm not sure if that fits or not. I'd have to do the math in my head, not in my head, I should say that. Patrick Mahomes, $17,500. So he's way priced above anybody else on the FanDuel side. So if I'm playing in GPPs over there, I'd probably be trying to fade him a little bit more than I would otherwise. But that's just kind of me. And then let's see who else is there that stands out. McCall Hardman, $7,500. MVS is $8,000. Juju is $10,000. So I'd probably go to MVS or McCall Hardman, try to get lucky with them. Maybe you play Patrick Mahomes in the champion spot. Maybe you play MVS and Hardman, and maybe you can play Travis Kelsey all together. Travis Kelsey's $13,500 there. So a little bit cheaper than Devonte Adams. So that makes some sense if you want to play him. He's $1,000 cheaper versus $600 cheaper on DraftKings. You could get cute with Noah Gray at $5,500. Jody Fortson, I like him a lot more on DraftKings, but he's $7,000 on FanDuel. Sky Moore, $6,000 on FanDuel. If you want to take that shot, not a bad play over there. And then Matthew Wright, the kicker, is $9,500. That's kind of a lot for a kicker over on FanDuel side. But if anybody in here has any questions before I get out of here, you got a couple of minutes left. I'm going to leave it open for you guys. If you have anything before I do get out of here, I know it was a little bit lighter crowd tonight overall, but definitely appreciate everybody that did tune in, even just for a little bit. Should be a relatively interesting game overall, but definitely hit me up with any questions you have in the next couple of minutes. If you don't, feel free to reach me. feel free to reach out to me on Twitter at Coach Craig Sport. Definitely interested. I'll definitely help you guys out as much as I can prior to game time. If you have any questions about DFS in general, definitely be sure to reach out to me there, whether it's for tonight, whether it's for the Thursday night football game. Also check out that stream as well. But definitely appreciate you guys coming in. Looks like everybody kind of cleared out of here at this point in time, so I'm going to make my way out as well. But definitely appreciate everybody that did come in, and good luck to you all tonight. And hopefully you guys will win some money.